Thank you guys for being supporters of the Footy Nose podcast. I'm your host, Bonisile. I am going to be talking about Premier League football week 25 and winners, losers, everything in between. And the weekend at the top, I think that's probably the best place to start. Is talk about what we saw in the top fixtures. There were several fortunes or misfortunes for different teams in the top. I think Liverpool is probably the biggest loser of them all in terms of the way the results played out this weekend. Liverpool losing in painful fashion to Manchester City. I probably should start there and then kind of like work around some of the other big games. So Liverpool City ended, it was a snooze fest, I'm not going to lie. For majority of that game, I was like, this game is Liverpool are playing Man City like they're playing their daddy. That's kind of like the joke I was saying in my group chats. And that one ended 2-1 City. And I can't be mad at City winning that game, even though obviously as an Arsenal fan, I would have preferred a Liverpool win or a draw. But unlike most Arsenal fans, I'm not too fazed by City winning in that game because, you get to play everybody twice. And on the day, I must be fair. And I think Manchester City played a better first half, and then Liverpool tried to kind of get into the game in the second half, and they did. They get that goal. And then I don't know, it never looked in Liverpool's hands in my view. Like I liked bits of what I saw from Manchester City. And I always thought with the bench that they have, Manchester City were going to maybe do Liverpool because Liverpool didn't have a lot of help from the bench from what I could see. And I always worried about that, if I'm being honest. And so I thought, okay, let's see how this plays out. I thought Liverpool were a bit tentative in the way they approached the game in the beginning stages. And Arne Slot admitted as much. He admitted that City were the better team in the first half. And I think City would have liked, the chances of improving the game from the bench compared to Liverpool's chances of improving the game from the bench. City had a lot of really good senior pros on that bench, and Liverpool were always going to have a hard time as the game progressed if they were not dominating with the players on the pitch. Mo Salah probably is the player who kind of had Liverpool's best moment that never even really happened. In that Mark Gehi with the score at 0-0, 60 plus minutes, maybe 65 minutes or so. Mo is played through and Gay grabs his jersey. If you're going to give that penalty on 90 plus minutes, I think the foul on Salah is a denial of a goal scoring opportunity. That's my opinion. But I don't think that's the reason Liverpool lost the game. I think that's one of the reasons, because if Liverpool play against 10 men for the last 20 minutes, maybe they don't score the goal that Soboslai scores. Maybe they do. Maybe the game plays out differently, but you can't play in the what ifs. And so I'm not going to do that. I think Manchester City looked more hungry for the game and they looked like the team that was trying to force the issue to get the win. And Liverpool didn't give up, but I think City were playing a bit better than Liverpool across the 90 minutes. And the one thing that I'll say is that, like, yes, the Gahey thing, I can't, wave it away because I think 50-50 decisions continuously going for Manchester City is something that a lot of managers won't be happy about, and rightfully, you know what I mean. Like I'm an Arsenal fan. I think City would were the better team and probably deserve to win the game, but Craig Pawson and the VAR kind of did them favors, and I think that's the disappointing part in this game. Is the fact that the referees, have to be spoken about. Aside from that, I think City were the better team across the 90 minutes. Allison did some uncharacteristic things, coming out sometimes and not maybe making the connection with the ball that he wanted to. Allison again costing them the penalty. And then I know it's, trying to go for the goal to make it 2-2, but he does stay up too long, in my opinion, and probably gets his teammates sent off as a result. Soboslai. Manchester City are not going to, lay the red carpet for Arsenal to stroll to the finish line here, and nobody should. I'm not gonna say I'm happy Manchester City won this game because I'm an Arsenal fan. I'm never happy when they win. However, they did enough to win the game on the day, and they were going to win a game at some point. You know what I mean? Like they had gone a stretch of like 5 games before they played Wolves. They'd gone a stretch of about 4 or 5 games without a win. You know what I mean? And so now in the last 3 games, they've won against Wolves, drawn against Tottenham, and won against Liverpool. So Liverpool had themselves to blame for the game going the way it did there. And I know the talk now, because Manchester City won this game, is that the title race is back on, which I find puzzling, to be honest, because the title race was always on. But the narrative farmers out there and click farmers and engagement farmers out there have been trying to sell this as a foregone conclusion so that they can do something like this. The weekend, going into the weekend, most of these people were saying Arsenal have won the league. Da, 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 da. Arsenal went into the league, into the weekend of Premier League fixtures, 6 point ahead of Manchester City, right? They won their game. Manchester City won their game. It's as we were. But if you look at TalkSport, Sky Sports, probably rival content creators as well to a degree, and some Arsenal fans, not the ones I listen to and talk to anyway. Title race is back on. Was it ever not on? You know what I mean? Like, people are talking too much out of both sides of their mouths when it comes to this title race talk. And if I'm being 1,000% honest, I think any person who is able to apply some critical thinking is able to see through this. However, through the emotion of watching different games and listening to commentary, I've kind of stopped, but I do, I can't avoid it because it's everywhere. But I've sort of stopped. I mean, I was listening to Lee Dixon, the way he talks, you can tell he is a Manchester City fan. I know he's an Arsenal legend. He played for Arsenal. But a lot of the time when he opens his mouth, I don't want to say I believe this, but I've heard opinions from some people saying they wonder if some of these old Arsenal players who are now in the media are speaking so harshly of this group of Arsenal players because maybe they are jealous or whatever. I don't subscribe to that. I don't think it's as deep as I don't want this team to succeed because they're going to be better than me. They're going to be considered the same level as me. I just think people support the clubs they support. And, all of us have a bias. I have a bias as an Arsenal fan, even though I try to run a football content channel that speaks about, all football teams in the Premier League and some of the other leagues that I discuss. I try to be fair, just like in this case with Manchester City. I think Manchester City wanted the game. Liverpool wanted it too, but based on what we saw, I think Manchester City were the better team and they won. Like the referees have a bias in England, but these were two teams from the north, one playing at home. I don't feel sorry for Liverpool. City were there to be taken. They didn't play Ruben Diaz until second half. They played with Kusanov for a while, and Liverpool had the initiative to try and fight for Champions League football and maybe even have an outside chance of staying in the Premier League title race. 17 points behind Arsenal, a further, I don't know, however many behind Manchester City. They're probably not finishing top 2, but top 5, fortunately for Liverpool, top 5 might be good enough again this year to get Champions League football. But right now, as we speak, they're sitting outside of the top 5, and Chelsea and Manchester United have an advantage over them as we speak right now. Because Liverpool sit at 39 points. That's 4 points behind 5th place Chelsea. And so, that's not beyond reach, but to lose at home and to drop as many points at home as they have, with Champions League football coming back and FA Cup and all these other things, it's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky for all these teams because the Premier League is a very, very competitive, robust league. Like, I think people keep saying, because they don't see the results that we used to seeing, they keep looking at it from a negative standpoint. I think it's the strength of the league that teams are not running away with games and just like winning all the time. Everybody gets runs for 5 games, maybe 6 games. Villa has had the longest run this season, which was about 10, 11 straight wins or something like that. But since then, they're going on a run now of, in the last 5 games, they've only won 1 game. 2 draws, 2 losses, 1 win. And that win came against Newcastle away. But in that stretch of 5 games, they drew 0-0 against Crystal Palace. They lost to Everton at home. They then won against Newcastle away, then lost to Brentford at home, and drew with Bournemouth in this last game away. So, and Arsenal is coming out of a slump. We'll see what happens on Thursday. Arsenal, which is the other team in the championship race, right, or Premier League title race. In the last 5 games, they've gone draw, loss, win, win. Yes, 7 goals scored and 0 conceded in the last 2 games. But before that, they had 2-0 draws and a 3-2 loss at home to Manchester United, who are now looking alongside Chelsea like the most informed team in the Premier League, because them two in number 4 and number 5 have won their 4 straight games. Their last 4 games in a row they've won. So, it kind of like goes in cycles, and we'll see if Manchester United continues to put together a stretch of wins, because, they have new coaches there. Carrick, Steve Holland, Jonathan Woodgate, a lot of these English old boys. It's a very English-centric coaching squad or coaching crew. And we'll see like how it plays out for Manchester United. But at the moment, they're the hot team, them and Chelsea, in terms of Premier League results. And transitioning to the Arsenal game, because I have to talk about that. Arsenal were involved in a very competitive game against Sunderland. For the first half, I know they go into halftime 1-0 up, but that goal from Zubimendi comes very late in that first half, and Arsenal were not able to create a lot of clean-cut opportunities. They were limited to a few really good opportunities to shoot from long range, one of which was Declan Rice almost curling one in from a similar position to where Zubimendi scored from. And then the other one also would have been the chance that Kai Havertz carries the ball about half of the pitch and then shoots from a distance as well, but also bends it a bit too wide. And then the only other chance that I can think of from the top of my head that was really good was Gabriel Jesus being really unfortunate for being offside. It was an offside, but the complexity there for me in understanding the interpretation of this offside rule is at live, I thought he could be onside because, he's standing on his half of the pitch and you can't be offside from the half of the pitch, not peach. However, the side of his body that's not on the ground is leaning over the line. So I guess if that's how you're doing it, then the offside, then Gabriel Jesus is offside. I just was struggling at the time live to make sense of that. I was like, is that offside? Turns out it was, and it's fine. And it turns out it didn't matter after all it was said and done. But I think Jesus, being the striker that starts this game, he kind of struggled. Noni Madueke starts this game as well. They both struggled offensively, but they put in some valuable minutes for the team, both Noni Madueke and Gabriel Jesus. And on the hour mark, Arsenal is having a lead, and then you throw on Gyökeres and Martinelli for both Jesus and the good thing about the way this game played out is Arsenal really found a good way of utilizing the depth of their squad, with the exception of the midfield. I think there was an opportunity here against Sunderland at home to play Christian Norgard. And I'm going to keep banging this drum because I think expecting Martin Zubimendi and Declan Rice to play this level of minutes and to keep the level of consistency, which they have, by the way, kept. I think we are asking too much, and I hope for everyone's sake that they stay healthy. But at some point, especially in March and April, this is going to start showing. And this is when those are the times actually where Arsenal has had some stiff injury luck, with the exception of 2023-24, where we were able to roll out the same 11 to 13 guys for that last 18 games in the Premier League. We won 16, lost 1, drew 1. But outside of that, it's usually around now, between now and May, where we start getting some injuries. And so maybe that's my trauma talking as an Arsenal fan, but I really worry about the usage rate of Martin Zubimendi and Declan Rice. And I also understand the importance of both of them two players in this team. They are enormously important for Mikel Arteta and every Arsenal fan, right? And yes, players can get hurt from playing less times as well. So it's a very hard one. I sympathize with the manager on this one. But outside of that, like, there was rotation, Gyökeres coming on, scores within the first 5-6 minutes of coming on, and then him and Martinelli combine for the third goal, right? And Martinelli was a nuisance. He pressed hard, ran all over the place, and then he has himself an assist from the bench. I kind of like Gabriel Martinelli playing on the right a little bit more. I think this actually suits him a little bit because he's a player who does play with his head down, and when he's playing on the right, he can play at least he can see the pitch a little bit better. He's on his strong foot. He can time his runs. He can run also diagonally into those good positions with his eyes on the ball, and he can see the game in front of him. Whereas when he's playing on the left and as an inverted player, he doesn't have a full view of the pitch because of the way he plays. His technique and the way he runs and carries the ball, runs with the ball and carries it is it tends to be very head down and go go go. Whereas it kind of makes his mind up a little bit. The pitch opens up for him in a beautiful way when he plays on the right. And I think, for example, some of the best moments that I've seen from him this season has been him running down the middle, either from the left, but a lot of the time from the right, including that time he scored against Manchester City. I also know, like, several times these last couple of weeks when Saka's been out, him and Noni have been sharing that right-hand side, and it's worked out okay so far. I'm very happy with what I'm seeing from the front players after that little slump. I don't know if we're over it, but Gyökeres, next to Martinelli, gets himself 2 goals, right? And he's now scored 4 goals in his last 6 appearances. And he seems to also be able to keep working and get joy late in games, either from the bench or sometimes when he starts, because he's not having to play 90 minutes every 3 days now that we have Jesus back, and we have Kai Havertz also helping to do a little bit of the heavy lifting in some of the games that they've started together recently. And then when Kai Havertz plays, for example, in this game, about maybe 10 or so more, like, no, not 10 minutes, involved in Gyökeres' first goal, and then he left the pitch soon after, right? With Eze coming on. As soon as we went 2-0 up, Eze came on, and Piero Incapie came on for Calafiori, who struggled. But it was understandable that Calafiori struggled in this game. So Arsenal played a really good game. I'm glad to see that they were willing to roll up their sleeves and like really try to win the physical contest before basically dominating the football contest. Premier League right now, you really have to be in tip-top shape to win the physical battles first. And then your football does the talking from that point. But the prerequisite for all Premier League teams to get a win seems to be you get involved in the physical battle first. And yes, every once in a while, you might be lucky and run into a team who doesn't feel like having that physical battle, and you may have a good win in your hands, and a handsome win. But most Premier League teams now don't cheat on defense. They stick around, they stay in with you, they fight with you, and ultimately it becomes a game of who can outlast the durability. It's basically a triathlon in the Premier League at the moment. You have to win the physical battle, then you win the tactical battle, then you win the football battle. But physical battle first, seems to be. You have to be in the contest to win it. And yes, like, very clever coaches who plan very well, and squads are filled with talented players, including teams like Sunderland, who sit very pretty in the top half of the Premier League table as a newly promoted side who came through the playoffs. So I think there's a lot to be encouraged with Arsenal. All this talk about title race on, title race not done, now done, Arsenal's to lose. It's been silly. It's been silly since October, but it's even more silly now. This is a race until it's mathematically, like, out of reach. And with 6 points going into the weekend, it's still the same coming out of the weekend. And yes, Manchester City are going to like their chances because they have a coach who is one of the all-time greats in the coaching game. All time, not just in the current crop of coaches in the Premier League. Pep is one of those guys in the Mount Rushmore of coaching. And they also have a very talented, very well expensively assembled squad. I'm not going to be getting fooled by all this talk about Manchester City being poorly and plucky and whatnot. And maybe some of their complaints about refereeing help them at Anfield. I don't know, but I'm not interested in that. I'm not going to be complaining about referees. I'm not going to be complaining about Manchester City being this juggernaut who spent a lot of money. Arsenal are good this year, and they have the players they need. So no complaining. Just roll up your sleeve and fight. That's my view. Just roll up your sleeves and fight for the championship. It's there. It's 6 points. Any Arsenal fan would have taken this position going into the season in August. It's going to be February the 9th, you are 6 points ahead of the challenging team, the next challenging team, with 13 games to go. Everybody is taking that deal. That's the deal we have, and that's the deal we're going to have to work with. Match Manchester City's results or better. 13 finals. Let's see where we are after game week 38. But after game week 25, you're sitting there with 6 points ahead of Manchester City. And yes, you have to play each other. And everybody seems to think the fact that the game is at the Etihad is going to be Manchester City's 3 points because it's at the Etihad. But if you're Arsenal, you have to go into that game with belief. You have to believe that you can go to the Etihad and win, just like they believed, City, that they can go to Anfield and win. It's a beautiful thing. Like, I don't know why people are losing their heads over this. I know it would have been nice for Arsenal to have more points in the buffer for most Arsenal fans, but to be honest, like, who cares? Nobody has ever done that, win the league by the first week of February. We're in the first week of February, and people, even Manchester City, in their full prime, a better Manchester City than this one, they have never closed the league in February. And so for Arsenal fans to be losing their heads, some, not all of them, I know, but there are some Arsenal fans I listen to online, and some of them I actually enjoy listening to. But the fact that some of them are like, we lost the chance, this should be dead. I'm like, they're invincible. They didn't win the invincible Arsenal team didn't win the Premier League first week of February. Yes, they had some games to spare later on, but the last 4 games were kind of like a wash. But that's not in the first week of February. So, perspective is important here. Anyway, we'll move. Manchester United keep vibing it. They keep vibing it under Michael Carrick, Steve Holland, and Jonathan Woodgate and the crew. Tottenham were very helpful in that cause. Their captain lets them down massively in this one, especially after going big on social media complaining about how the club is not there for you and you only have 11 senior players available. How do you then, as the club captain, leave your team having to play more than an hour of football with 10 men? After you made this big remark about how no one is supporting you and they're only there, during good times. I don't understand that. That Tottenham result is not only on Romero, but he has to look at himself for that one. And then the other results, Leeds impressive after, losing to after losing to Arsenal 4-0, to beat Nottingham Forest 3-1 was heavily impressive. Bournemouth and Villa 1-1, so that's nothing to talk about there. West Ham will be happy with their result because they got themselves back close to touching distance from Nottingham Forest. They're about 3 points behind. And Everton continue their very impressive season. They're having a season kind of similar to Brentford. And then Newcastle losing at home to Brentford, who's been impressive all season. I can never say enough about Keith Andrews and what coaching job he's done there. And then Chelsea wins in a row, and that's good for Rafinha. And Cole Palmer gets himself a first half hat trick, but Wolves are a joke. So again, not a game worthy of too much analysis because Wolverhampton Wanderers are just, I don't understand what's going on there. It looks like they've already accepted that they're getting relegated. So yeah, not worth too much discussion. But that's the roundup for week 25. And I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Cheers.